The hidden method of Andrew Carnegie to master your mind and change your life. Andrew Carnegie learned very early that the greatest obstacle between an ordinary man and an extraordinary life is not external, but internal. Before becoming one of the richest men in history, he was just another poor young man working long hours, surrounded by limitations, uncertainty, and an apparent lack of opportunity. But there was something different about Carnegie. He understood that before changing the world around him, he had to master the world within his own mind. Carnegie believed that the human mind works like a lens. If that lens is distorted by fear, scarcity, and doubt, reality will be perceived as a threat. But when the lens is trained for clarity, purpose, and discipline, the world begins to organize itself differently. Carnegie's hidden method was not taught in technical books. It was lived daily, in silence, through consistent mental choices. The first principle of this method was taking full control of one's thoughts. Carnegie said that repeated thoughts become beliefs, and beliefs shape behavior. Those who do not choose what to think end up thinking based on what they feel, and those who live guided only by feelings become unstable. That is why he trained his mind not to react automatically to circumstances, but to respond with strategy. Carnegie observed that most people live in a reactive state. They react to problems, react to criticism, react to crises. He, on the other hand, lived in a creative state. He constantly asked himself, "What is this trying to teach me? Or how can this be used to my advantage in the long run?" This simple change in questioning completely transformed the way he dealt with challenges. Another fundamental pillar of the method was long-term focus. Carnegie believed that those who think only about the present become prisoners of the present. He made decisions with years in mind, not days. This required emotional mastery because it often meant giving up immediate gains to build something greater in the future. To him, a strong mind is one that can endure waiting without losing direction. Carnegie also understood that the mind needs structure. He organized his thoughts, goals, and decisions. Nothing was left loose. He said that a disorganized mind creates a disorganized life. That is why he wrote things down, reviewed them, and made adjustments. He did not leave important ideas only in his head, because he knew that an overloaded mind naturally drifts toward chaos. One of the most powerful aspects of Carnegie's hidden method was control of the inner dialogue. He knew that no one influences a person more than they influence themselves. Thoughts of victimhood, inferiority, or resignation were not tolerated. When they appeared, they were questioned. Carnegie believed that the mind must be trained like a muscle. If you do not strengthen it consciously, it weakens on its own. He also believed that discipline comes before motivation. Carnegie did not wait to feel like acting. He acted, and motivation followed. For him, waiting for the perfect moment was a disguised form of fear. People who master their minds do not negotiate with mental laziness. They build habits that work even on difficult days. Another central point was selectivity. Carnegie said that the mind absorbs everything it is exposed to. Negative conversations, toxic environments, and people without vision slowly corrode thinking. That is why he was extremely careful about who he surrounded himself with and what kind of information he consumed. Protecting the mind was a strategy for both survival and growth. Carnegie also believed that problems should not just be solved, but transformed into systems. When something went wrong, he did not limit himself to fixing the immediate issue. He created structures to prevent the same mistake from happening again. This systemic mindset required mental clarity, patience, and strategic vision, qualities only a trained mind can sustain. Another essential element of the method was intellectual humility. Despite his success, Carnegie knew that a mind that believes it already knows everything begins to decline. He maintained a habit of learning, listening, and revising beliefs. For him, mastering the mind did not mean hardening it, but keeping it flexible, curious, and adaptable. He also understood that poorly managed emotions sabotage great decisions. Carnegie avoided acting out of anger, fear, or excessive euphoria. He learned to pause, calm the mind, and only then decide. This ability to avoid impulsive reactions was one of his greatest advantages in negotiations and moments of crisis. At its core, Andrew Carnegie's hidden method was based on a simple but powerful idea. Whoever masters the mind masters their own destiny. The external world may be unpredictable, but the internal response can be trained. And it is that response that defines the course of life. Carnegie did not believe in continuous luck. He believed in daily mental preparation. Small correct choices, repeated over time, create inevitable results. He said that most people try to change their lives by changing location, jobs, or circumstances, when in fact they should begin by changing their mental patterns. In the end, Andrew Carnegie did not build only material wealth. He built clarity, discipline, and inner mastery. And that is why his legacy crosses generations. Because when the mind changes level, life is forced to follow. The hidden method is not found in magic formulas. It is found in the daily practice of thinking better, deciding better, and acting better. And those who do this day after day do not just change their own lives, they build something that lasts. And Carnegie knew that this kind of construction does not happen explosively. It happens silently. While many were chasing quick recognition, he was busy strengthening his mind to sustain greater responsibilities. He used to say that there is no point in achieving something big with a small mind, because everything that is great requires internal structure so it does not collapse. For this reason, an essential part of Carnegie's hidden method was learning how to live with discomfort without losing internal control. He understood that growth always generates tension. New responsibilities, new risks, new decisions. Those who do not master their own minds try to escape this discomfort. Those who do master it use discomfort as a signal of evolution. To Carnegie, discomfort was not a warning of danger. It was a sign of expansion. He also believed that the mind must be trained to assume total responsibility. No blaming the market, the government, the family, or the past. Carnegie said that the moment a person takes complete responsibility for their own life is the moment they regain power. While blame is outside, control is also outside. But when responsibility returns inward, command returns with it. Another decisive point was the ability to maintain internal coherence. Carnegie observed that many people know what should be done, but do not do it. This disconnection between thought and action weakens the mind. He believed that every time someone makes a promise to themselves and breaks it, they create an internal crack. Over time, those cracks turn into self-sabotage. That is why he defended small commitments, rigorously fulfilled. Carnegie also trained his mind to deal with time in a mature way. He said that anxiety is the desire to harvest before planting enough. A mastered mind understands that everything has a process. He neither rushed nor froze. He maintained consistency. To him, consistency was more powerful than occasional intensity. A strong mind does not need emotional spikes to keep moving forward. A less noticed aspect of the method was how Carnegie dealt with mistakes. He did not punish himself emotionally. He analyzed. To him, mistakes were data, information, feedback. People who do not master their minds turn mistakes into identity. People who do master their minds turn mistakes into adjustments. This difference completely changes a person's destiny over the years. He also knew that the mind needs silence. In a noisy world, Carnegie created spaces for reflection. Thinking to him was work. Important decisions were not made impulsively or in the middle of noise. He used to say that clarity is born when the mind slows down enough to see patterns. Another central element was vision. Carnegie held in his mind a clear image of the kind of man he wanted to become, not just what he wanted to achieve. He believed that results are a consequence of identity. When identity changes, behavior changes. And when behavior changes consistently, results inevitably appear. He also understood that mastering the mind means choosing internal battles wisely. Not every thought deserves attention. Not every doubt deserves debate. Carnegie trained his mind to ignore mental distractions and focus on what truly moved his construction forward. This gave him an enormous advantage in a world where most people get lost in noise. In the end, Andrew Carnegie's hidden method was not hidden because it was secret, but because it requires responsibility, discipline, and consistency, things few are willing to practice every day. It is easier to seek external shortcuts than to organize internal chaos. Carnegie proved that when a man masters his own mind, he does not depend on circumstances to move forward. He creates direction. He creates structure. He creates progress, even when the environment is not favorable. And that is why true life change does not begin when everything improves on the outside. It begins when something is definitively adjusted on the inside. When the mind becomes an ally, not an enemy. Those who understand this method do not merely improve their lives. they become capable of sustaining what they build. And that, according to Andrew Carnegie, is the true meaning of success. And Carnegie would conclude this philosophy with something few people like to hear, but which changes everything once understood. Mastering the mind is not an event, it is a lifestyle. There is no day when you mentally arrive. There is the daily commitment to observe, correct, and direct your own mind, even when no one is watching and when there is no immediate reward. He believed that the human mind naturally tends toward chaos if it is not governed. Scattered thoughts, conflicting desires, uncontrolled emotions. That is why the true leader, whether of a company, a family, or one's own life, must first become a leader of himself. Carnegie said that those who do not govern their own minds end up being governed by emotions, fear, or the opinions of others. One of the deepest points of Carnegie's hidden method was the ability to remain centered under pressure. He observed that many men function well when everything is calm, but collapse when crises arise. Carnegie trained his mind not to identify with external chaos. He understood that problems are inevitable, but internal loss of control is optional. When crises appeared, he did not ask, "Why is this happening to me?" but rather, "What is this trying to teach me?" This simple change of question transformed tension into learning. To Carnegie, every pressure carries an instruction. Those who learn grow. Those who resist suffer. Another important pillar was the ability to delay gratification. Carnegie knew that the mind seeks immediate pleasure, but success requires conscious renunciation. He said that those who do not learn to say not now to small comforts end up saying no forever to great achievements. Mastering the mind was, in large part, learning to choose what strengthens the future, not just what relieves the present. He also understood that the mind needs rhythm. It is not about working nonstop, but about working with intention. Carnegie respected cycles of deep focus and moments of recovery. He knew that an exhausted mind makes poor decisions. That is why caring for mental clarity was just as important as caring for business. Carnegie believed that most people do not fail due to lack of ability, but due to internal incoherence. They think one thing, say another, and do a third. This fragmentation generates confusion, exhaustion, and stagnation. The hidden method demanded alignment, thinking, deciding, and acting in the same direction. When this happens, energy stops being dissipated. Another central teaching was control of internal identity. Carnegie said that the world treats you the way you see yourself. If you see yourself as provisional, the world treats you as disposable. If you see yourself as someone under construction, the world begins to respond with proportional opportunities. The mind creates the pattern. The world responds to the pattern. He also warned about a silent enemy, the habit of comparison. Carnegie saw constant comparison as a leak of mental energy. Each person has a different timing, path, and mission. To compare yourself is to abandon your own process. Mastering the mind meant keeping your eyes on your own progress, not on someone else's trajectory. A rarely discussed but extremely powerful point was the ability to remain faithful to the vision even when results take time. Carnegie said that most people quit at the exact point when internal growth is about to convert into external results. He called this the invisible test. Those who pass it without abandoning discipline enter a new level. He believed that God, or the intelligence that governs life, responds to a prepared mind, not to a rushed mind, nor an anxious one. A disciplined mind creates space for greater opportunities. That is why Carnegie did not ask for fewer challenges. He became bigger to sustain them. Another fundamental aspect of the hidden method was internal integrity. Carnegie said that the mind knows when you are being dishonest with yourself. Every self-deception weakens internal trust. Every aligned decision strengthens it. Over time, the mind begins to trust you. And when that happens, action becomes lighter, clearer, and more consistent. He also understood that mastering the mind means learning to live with the silence of great decisions. Not everything needs to be explained, announced, or validated. Some of the most important decisions are made internally, in silence, and only reveal their fruits years later. Carnegie did not seek immediate applause. He sought solidity. In the end, Andrew Carnegie made it clear that changing one's life does not begin by changing environment, city, or profession. It begins by changing the mental pattern you carry everywhere. If the mind does not change, the scenery changes, but the results repeat. The hidden method does not promise ease. It promises consistency. It does not promise shortcuts. It promises internal structure. And that is exactly why it works. Because when a man masters his own mind, he does not just change his life. He changes the level of decisions he makes. He changes the way he reacts. He changes the type of opportunities he recognizes. And inevitably, he changes the destiny he builds. This was the true legacy of Andrew Carnegie. Not just wealth, but a mind capable of sustaining any level of success that life may demand. And Carnegie knew that this level of mental mastery creates something rare, inner stability in an unstable world. He said that when the mind is weak, any external change becomes a threat. But when the mind is strong, change becomes leverage. Crises stop being endings and become course corrections. He observed that many men even achieve success, but cannot sustain it because they never worked on their internal foundation. When criticism, loss, or the unexpected arises, the mind collapses. Carnegie saw this happen repeatedly. Brilliant people sabotaging their own journey because they didn't know how to deal with pressure, solitude, or responsibility. That is why he believed true growth happens when no one is watching. Not in applause, but in the silent repetition of correct choices. To master the mind meant maintaining discipline even after enthusiasm fades. It meant continuing to do what must be done when the novelty disappears. Another essential point of the hidden method was learning not to react immediately. Carnegie said that quick reactions are usually emotional reactions, and emotion without direction comes at a high cost. He trained his mind to pause, breathe, observe, only then decide. This pause created advantage. While others acted impulsively, he acted strategically. He also understood that the mind needs truth in order to grow. Internal lies delay evolution. Justifications, excuses, victimhood. All of these numb temporarily but weaken you in the long run. Carnegie believed that facing reality, no matter how uncomfortable, was an act of power. Truth organizes the mind. Illusion fragments it. One principle that guided his life was simple but profound. Everything you tolerate, you reinforce. Weak thoughts tolerated become mental habits. Negative environments tolerated become patterns. Misaligned behaviors tolerated become identity. Mastering the mind meant learning to cut early whatever sabotated the future. Carnegie also spoke often about total responsibility. He said that the moment a man takes full responsibility for his life, he regains control of his mind. As long as he blames external factors, he remains a prisoner. When he assumes responsibility, even without total control over circumstances, he begins to control responses, decisions, and direction. Another powerful aspect was the training of attention. Carnegie knew that the mind follows what receives constant focus. Where you place your attention, you place your energy. And where you place your energy, you build reality. That is why he avoided wasting attention on gossip, useless distractions, and purposeless conflicts. He protected focus as a precious asset. He said that most people live exhausted not because they work too much, but because they think in a disorganized way. Scattered thoughts drain energy. Mental clarity restores strength. That is why Carnegie organized ideas, wrote, reflected, and simplified. A clear mind decides better, acts better, and suffers less. The hidden method also required the courage to be alone. Carnegie understood that great decisions are not always understood at the moment they are made. Those who depend on constant approval end up adjusting their mind to please, not to build. He valued moments of silence and introspection, where he could align vision and purpose. He believed that the mind needs an elevated vision to avoid getting lost in small conflicts. When you know where you are going, small obstacles do not knock you off balance. But when there is no clear vision, any problem feels enormous. Carnegie kept his vision always ahead, not as fantasy, but as direction. And perhaps the most transformative teaching of all is this: the mind should not be a place of war, but of command. Many people live in permanent internal conflict. They want to move forward, but they are afraid. They want to change, but feel insecure. Carnegie said that this internal war must end. The mind needs decision, not endless debate. When a decision is made internally, action flows with less resistance. Doubt loses strength. Fear diminishes. Not because it disappears, but because it no longer commands. In the end, Andrew Carnegie did not leave only companies, libraries, or impressive numbers. He left an invisible map for those who desire more from life without losing themselves in the process. To master the mind is not to become cold. It is to become conscious. It is not to eliminate emotions. It is to govern them. It is not to control the world. It is to not be controlled by it. And whoever learns this changes life not by chance, but by choice.